But all I just wanted to say is that we did develop over several meetings with lots of voices participating, a strategic plan for Ruthless Central Florida, which is something we haven't really had before, that we're hoping that with that kind of a plan that we can have more transparency and more accountability for the work that we do. And I'll just say this evening, since we're not going to take time to discuss it, that I will forward it to everybody, and I welcome all of you to review it and input and give us your feedback, and we'd be happy to consider your points. We've got so many things to be excited about for 2021. I don't think any of us could have felt more excited than seeing Kamala take the oath of office last week. It's hard to imagine, it's just a week. So that was pretty historic. And today I flipped on the news for just a moment and caught Kamala swearing in Janet Yellen, the very first woman ever to be the Secretary of the Treasury. And maybe she will actually be able to get Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. So a lot of things happening for women, really wonderful, and a lot of wonderful things happening right here in Florida and Central Florida. We have an amazing lineup this evening of women who we elected and work hard for us, and we are grateful for all of them, and we will hear from them very soon. But right now, I'm really excited to introduce, I'm looking for her in this melange of pictures. Oh, I see the Honorable Pat Schroeder has joined us, who is on our advisory board. So Pat, maybe you can give us a wave. Thank you for joining us. We're so happy you're here. And I didn't recognize our board members, so let's just take a moment. If you're on the board for Central Florida, please wave your hand so we can see who you are, Jackie. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm going to just turn this over right away. I'm so excited and thrilled to introduce Emma Collum, our new board chair for Ruthless Florida. Emma?
Hi, Susan. Hi, everybody. I'm so honored to be here. I've so been looking forward to meeting with the Central Florida Regional Volunteer Leads. Your board is amazing, your advisory board is incredible, and your candidates are top-notch. So quickly, ladies, I'm going to give you the bad news before I give you the good news, all right? That's how I was taught to do it. So the bad news is here. Florida is represented by 51% women. And our government is made up of a little less than 30%. It gets a little bit worse. We've never had a woman as the governor of Florida. Further than that, on many of our Senate committees, we have no women leadership. We don't even have women on the committees. I don't think I need to tell this group why that's a problem. A much wiser woman than I once said, all human issues are women's issues. So when we don't have equitable and equal representation of women, especially Black women, especially women of color, especially LGBTQ women at the table, you better believe that those human issues and those women issues are being forgotten. That's why we have a problem with our education system in Florida. That's why we're not expanding healthcare in Florida. And that's why through this Biden administration, we've heard that less than 50% of the vaccines eligible to Floridians have been rolled out. Folks, we need our voices at the table. So that's the bad news. Here's the really good news. We know how to fix this. We fix this by getting women in positions of government and getting women in positions of power. Here's the even better news. Ruthless has a plan and we have a track record to do it. So in 2018, when we heard about the blue wave hitting everywhere else but Florida, we actually had 8 red to blue flip seats. Of those 8, 7 were women. And of those 7, they were all Ruthless endorsed candidates. Coming up to our most recent election, Ruthless endorsed 105 women through municipal and state government. Of those 105, we had 71 wins. That's incredible. Of those 71 wins, we had incredible women like Michelle Rayner, like Angie Nixon, like Marie Woodson. On the municipal level, we have Nancy Mateer, who is the first ever Haitian and the first ever Black woman to serve on the Coral Springs Commission. We have Sarah Leonardi and Alex Ayala down in Palm Beach and Broward County who are fighting to get teachers vaccinated and are the youngest school board members ever represented. Ruth's List can do that by mentoring, training, recruiting, and supporting those women. And you here in the regional groups, you are the lifeblood. I know that Susan has told you about time, talent, treasure, and we need all of it because we have to build in 2021 so that in 2022, we turn blue. And we're going to turn blue because we have such incredible leaders like the ones you're going to hear from tonight, like the Honorable Geraldine Thomas, like the incredible Honorable Anna Eskamani, like Amy Mercado, who is unstoppable, like our Nikki Fried, like Angie Nixon, like Michelle Rayner. This is our bench. And we are going to, because of women like you, we're going to take the governor's office in 2022. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you that you all know it takes treasure to do this. So if you find what I'm saying inspiring, and if you find the rest of this inspiring, one, I am available at any time. Please reach out to me. Susan knows how accessible I am. But two, consider going to Ruth's List tonight and donating anything. $5, $10, $25, everything's going to make sure that we have a Florida that is equitable and that looks like everybody who's on that call, not the money from the top. I'm so honored to be here tonight, but I'm also really, really honored to welcome two women that I'm so excited for you all to be able to meet and ended up being able to make it today. The first is Barbara Zadecki, who is the current interim CEO of Ruth's List, who has been doing everything to mentor, train, and make sure that we have an incredible staff. And our new announcement is Lucy Sedgwick, who is on today, fresh off of some incredible work that she's going to talk to you a little bit about. And Lucy is coming in as our brand new CEO for 2021. I can't wait to work with her. And ladies, thank you for being here with us. Thank you for supporting Ruth's List. Susan, I cannot thank you enough for all the work you do. So I'm going to turn this over to Barbara and to Lucy. And just remember, women together, we're unstoppable. We can do this. Thanks.
So I will introduce myself for those of you that I haven't met or at least talked to on the phone. I'm Barbara Dravecki, and I've been the interim CEO for Ruth's List Florida since last May. And it was my pleasure and honor to work with so many wonderful candidates over this past season, and with the staff, be able to account for all of those wins that Emma was telling you about. We have a lot of wonderful things that have happened this past couple months. Our board of directors has just added 4 new members. And of course, Emma has been introduced as our new board chair from Broward County. And our new CEO, Lucy Sedgwick, who just started yesterday. Both of these young women are 36 years old. And so I'm really glad to have the youth that has been recruited to come in and lead Ruth's List into this next iteration of working on elections and recruiting women and training them and giving them the support that they need to take on leadership roles within the state of Florida. It's been grueling to watch what happened before the Biden administration came in. And I think we all know that there's lots and lots of work to do. We've already begun with our board work, looking at getting more representation from around the state of Florida. There's a lot of places that have not yet been touched by Ruth's List, whether recruiting candidates or recruiting members to the organization. And we need everybody's help to do that because we really want to build a very robust team of women across every area of Florida. And I do want to give just a shout out to the fact that, you know, President Biden took over Duval County, Jacksonville this year, which means there's a plethora of opportunity for us in North Florida that we haven't seen for a while. So it's very, very exciting. I also want to thank our candidates who are on the call tonight, who worked hard. Some were successful, some not successful, but we know that your passion will resurface again. You'll lead us and move forward again with other campaigns. And we're starting our recruitment with the training that Kayla our political director does, should you run. And I'm sure Susan is going to send those emails out to everybody, so you can send them to folks who have some consideration or you think might make a good elected. And so that training is really important for us. And as Emma said, we can't do all of any of this really without funding for the work that we have in front of us. And so we're reaching a new day. I've been, like I said, pleased and privileged to lead this in an interim situation. Lori Wack's been invaluable here for us as working on our website and keeping things going. She's the quintessential volunteer. Marty's running her volunteer group, and Volusia and Susan here in Central Florida, Emma in Broward. We have great representation of the state. And yesterday I spent 8 hours with Lucy going over all of the stuff that the principal stuff that she needs to know about the history of Ruth's List and the 10-year growth that we have seen. And, despite not having as many victories this year as we had hoped, the country suffered as well. And so we recruited Lucy from Colorado. And when Lucy got finished with her latest gig, which was leading the ballot initiative in Florida or in Colorado that defeated the amendment to ban abortion after 22 weeks, we knew that when she contacted us and said, after she was finished in Colorado, she knew that she had to look for a place that she could help turn blue. And so she drove herself to Florida last week, rented a house in St. Petersburg, and started yesterday and in her orientation. And she has great plans for Ruth's List when she comes with national experience, both in presidential politics, working on the Warren campaign, being the national trainer, as well as a whole myriad of things that she has done and she can tell you about. So I am so grateful to be able to hand over the reins. We're crossing over for 2 weeks. I'll be going back on the board on February the 6th. And I'm going to turn this over to Lucy so she can say hey to all of you. And please give her a warm welcome, a warm Florida welcome for the energy that she's going to bring to revitalize and move forward Ruth's List in Florida. Lucy, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate all the clapping hands. Even if I can't hear them, I see them. I definitely don't recommend relocating during a global pandemic, but for Ruth's List, it was absolutely worth it. I'll keep my remarks very brief because I'm not the featured speaker this evening and that we have a lot of amazing women to hear from. I just want to say how excited I am to get to work alongside each and every one of you. I have a feeling we're going to get to connect in a myriad of ways. And all of these names actually look familiar because I've been hearing all about you over the last 24 hours. I do just want to say one thing I was thinking a lot about on my drive was the results, of course, coming out of Georgia and all of the well-deserved praise that was given to Stacey Abrams for her leadership. And so many people, in emails or on social media would say, well, there's got to be a Stacey in every state. We just need to find that woman and support her. And in my mind, there isn't just one Stacey in every state, and there certainly isn't just one Stacey here in Florida. So I'm excited to take the helm at Ruth's List and guide all of us and work alongside each one of you, because I think that we are all women with a vision for how to turn Florida blue and the skills and capability and passion to make it happen. So I'm just thrilled to get to see all of your faces, to learn from you tonight, and to work alongside you in the months and years to come to flip Florida from the state legislature to the governor's office to every school board, because we know every race matters. So thank you all so much for entrusting me in this next phase of the organization. I'm excited for all the things that we have to come. And thank you for having me this evening. Appreciate you all.
Barbara, thank you so much for everything that you did for us during this period of time. For those of us who work hard all the time as volunteers, we truly appreciate that you stepped in and really got us through all of this election time so well, and we're grateful. Emma and Lucy, we are excited for your leadership. And here in Central Florida, we are not afraid of work, and we are ready to dig in and get it done. So Thank you for taking this on, and you've got partners with us in Central Florida. So without any further time, I'd like to turn this over to our amazing moderator, Danielle Prendergast. She's a new member to Ruthless Florida in Central Florida, and she is also the CEO and owner of Empower Her Strategies, an empowerment, coaching, and leadership development company. So without any further comments, I'm going to turn this over to Danielle. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Susan. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm even more excited to present this panel of just absolutely phenomenal women of color who recognized what Emma was talking about and saw the urgent need for more women of color to step up into political office. And then courageously, they raised their hand and said, me, I'll run, I'll do this. And so that's what our conversation is going to focus on tonight. What it means, what it looks like, what it takes for when women of color lead, run, and win. And we're going to kick off this panel first with a brief clip from this really great documentary called And She Could Be Next. And it was filmed in 2018 and 2019 by a group of women filmmakers of color to chronicle some historic making campaigns of women of color candidates, including Stacey Abrams and Lucy McBath, both out of Georgia, Rashida Tlaib, Veronica Escobar, and several others. And then it also looks at the other side, and it looks at what they call these hidden figures. And these are the folks who are on the ground day in and day out, knocking on doors, talking to people, just this fierce, amazing group of women who were organizing in their community to make sure that people showed up and showed out when it came time to vote. And so it's a story about women who weren't willing to wait anymore for anyone else to come and save them, and instead decided that they were going to be the ones who were going to change the face of leadership and make their voices, make their stories, make their issues known and just undeniable. And so with that, on the other side of the clip, we'll come back and we'll get started with our panel, and we'll hear from some women in Central Florida, our own women, who also didn't want to wait any longer for someone else to come and save them either. So Lori, do you want to, with that, we'll start the clip and then I'll see you on the other side.
In the history of this country, any guesses out of 11,000 people that have served in the United States Congress, how many women of color have served?
There is this assumption that Black people don't vote, that Latinos are not American citizens, that Asian Americans are Republicans, and that young people are wholly unreliable.
I want you to understand that who I am is a product of a movement. There are not enough people on the inside that look like me.
People aspiring to be leaders in this country, they need to go through women of color because we're making our voices known.
Es un honor estar aquí con ustedes ahora para celebrar el amor que tienen ustedes como familias que están separadas por este muro.
When I say I'm a social justice seeker, I'm a mama for justice, or all these things, that's where I'm saying I'm American. I don't need to say it. I act like an American.
Candidates do not normally talk to people in the Asian American community because historically speaking, we are the community that turns out to vote at the lowest rate. So we want to change that here today.
Cái cô kia cô không có ở nhà, bác gái con không đi bầu không như con vẫn đi.
I'm sorry?
We're no longer asking for permission to do what we need to do. We're going to do it, and we're going to lead from the top, and people need to see it.
The sort of traditional notions of what's possible in American politics are being challenged every day.
Elections are important, but our lives are on the line. Elections
Sisters and brothers, it's about building power in our community to win what is right.
Except the communities that need to be brought in reflect the new American majority. They're young, they're brown, they might speak another language.
And there's a lot of us. I'm excited excited about the fact that women of color are now coming into our own, that we're standing up and taking our rightful place in the pantheon of leadership, that we're changing what the face of leadership looks like.
It is a new day, there's a new coalition, and ultimately we're gonna push this country forward because there's more of us than those that seek to do us harm.
So that is just a taste of a two-part documentary series that's available on PBS. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it. But that's all. It's amazing. It's wonderful, and it's just phenomenal. And it speaks to exactly what we're talking about today, because in our community, we do have a Stacy, we do have a Rashida, we do have all of these women, and some of them are here with us tonight. And it's my pleasure to introduce them to you. And then after which we will do some questions and answers. If you have a question for anyone on the panel, please type it in the chat box, and I will read them out, and I'll get through as many as we can tonight. If you want to address a specific person, please also indicate that with your question in the chat. And so with that, I will briefly introduce everyone. I won't be able to say everything that these women have done because sometimes there's just too much. So I really encourage you to get to know them on your own. And then once you do, please support them in their next election. So to begin, Representative Geraldine Thompson has been a fierce community advocate for more than 40 years. In 2018, she was elected to represent the 44th District in the Florida House of Representatives and was reelected again in 2020. She previously served in the Florida Senate from 2012 to 2016 and in the Florida House from 2006 to 2012, including 2 years where she was the House Democratic Leader pro tem from 2008 to 2010. She's also a former educator with Orange County Schools and administrator for 24 years at Valencia College. She is the founder of the Wells Built Museum, the College Reach Out program at Valencia College, and the co-founder of YMCA Achievers. And she sits on just numerous boards of directors. Pasha Baker was the 2020 Democratic nominee for the Florida House of Representatives from District 28. She's a third-generation resident of Seminole County and CEO of the Goldsboro West Side Community Historical Association, which includes 6 historical sites. She completed her BA in International Relations from the University of South Florida and executive courses from Yale University. As a business leader, she franchised a cupcake company, created a construction company, a women's retail store, a bartending school, and several other businesses. Yesenia Baron in 2020 was a candidate for the City of Apopka Council seat number 2, where she has lived since 2012. She was born and raised in Miami, the daughter of Cuban immigrants. She graduated from Florida International University with a BS in Criminal Justice, and then earned a Master of Science in Organizational Management from St. Thomas University. In 1997, she graduated from the Police Academy and rose through the ranks to become a special agent with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Ana Eskamani was born and raised in Orlando and is the daughter of immigrants who came to Florida from Iran. She was first elected to the Florida House in 2018 and then reelected again in 2020 to represent House District 47. She made history as the first Iranian American elected to any public office in the state of Florida. She's earned dual degrees as an undergraduate and graduate student from the University of Central Florida, and she is currently pursuing her PhD in public affairs. Tamika Lyles was a candidate in 2020 for the Florida House to represent District 43. She was born in Jackson, Tennessee, where she was also the youngest certified nursing assistant to pass the Tennessee State Board exam in the program's history. She is also a graduate of Lambeth University with a degree in sociology and a Master of Science degree from Kaplan University. Amy Mercado, in 2020, was elected Orange County Property Appraiser after serving in the Florida House of Representatives, where she represented House District 48 since 2016. She earned her executive MBA from the Jack Welch Management Institute at Strayer University and her bachelor's degree in business administration from American Intercontinental University. Amy is of Puerto Rican descent, born and raised in the Bronx, New York, but has called Orange County home since 1996. And Tiffany Moore Russell has served as the Orange County Clerk of Courts for the past 6 years. She is a native of Orlando. She is the youngest county commissioner ever elected to the Orange County Commission. She was the first African-American clerk elected in Florida and the first African-American clerk in Orange County. She received her bachelor's degree in political science from the University of South Florida and her law degree from FSU College of Law. So thank you, everyone. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We're so excited to hear what you have to say. I am going to take the privilege of the moderator and ask the first question of the panel. And that is, in what ways has your lived experience as a woman of color fueled your desire to run for public office? And Representative Thompson, if we could start with you, that would be great. And then anyone else who wants to answer, please just raise your hand with your on your computer, and we'll recognize you. Representative Thompson.
Good evening. It's so good to be with you all. And I'm glad to see 2020 in the rearview mirror. That was quite a challenging year. But my lived experience has to focus on the civil rights movement. I am a child of the civil rights movement. And I can remember as a student getting on a bus very early in the morning to go to school, to be bused to school. And on the way to school, I passed 2 schools where my bus could not stop because of the color of my skin. And so I passed 2 schools to get to the one school that would offer education and instruction to African Americans. And my entire high school career, that was the case, even though we had the United States Supreme Court say in Brown v. Board that separate and unequal, so-called equal, was unconstitutional, but that is my reality. And so I have worked without being elected for years to bring about social change, to bring about a level playing field for people of color. And when people ask me about some of the things that I've done in that regard, you talked about my starting the college reach out program at Valencia College when I was an administrator there. And it was a recruitment tool to bring in low-income minority students to acclimate them to a college environment. I raised funds locally to provide scholarships when they finished the program so that they could go on to college. Those dollars were matched by the state of Florida. After about 10 years, the Florida legislature decided not to match the funds. And so I came to Tallahassee to testify before committees, to meet with legislators. And I was told that, and this was in the 80s, I was told that in America, there was a level playing field and everyone had the same opportunities, and that there was no need for a program that specifically targeted low-income minority students. That was not my reality. And I began to think then that I needed to come to Tallahassee in a different role to provide a different perspective, but I didn't run at that time. The other thing that motivated me was going into the inner city in Orlando, into a neighborhood called Paramore, and seeing a historic structure that opened in the 1920s that was listed in the Green Book, and it was slated for demolition. And my idea was to begin a museum of African American history and culture. And when I contacted the state of Florida, Division of Historical Resources, I was told that the community was a slum, and that it was a blighted area, and that there was crime and drugs and prostitution and all kinds of things, which was true because there had not been an investment in that neighborhood. And so that those two things combined, as a woman of color, motivated me to seek office to bring a different perspective to the discussions in Tallahassee, and to reach back to change the experience for people coming behind me so that they would not face some of the kinds of things that I face. And I'm still working on that today. Tomorrow, the legislature will consider House Bill 1, which one of the things that it does, you get 15 years in jail for removing a memorial, which translates to a Confederate statue. You get a heightened penalty for what they're calling rioting and looting. And I know that change in America has come from the bottom up and not the top down. And from the bottom up, you had people marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, sitting in, facing dogs and fire hoses. And that kind of bottom up activity, that kind of peaceful assembly, led to the Civil Rights Act, led to the Voting Rights Act, led to family medical leave, led to the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's how change happens. But even in 2021, there are people who want to silence the voices of certain populations. And so in committee tomorrow, we will hear HB 1, which is anti-First Amendment, and is designed, it is not in response, as people have been told, it's not in response to January 6th and what happened at the United States Capitol. It's in response to Black Lives Matter and what happened this summer after the death of George Floyd.
Thank you so much. Tamika and then Tiffany, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of such an amazing panel of women in leadership in this state. I am truly honored. Many things led me to this path, but I will say, as a veteran, I took an oath to serve this country and to protect those that, couldn't protect themselves. As an educator, I'm a leader. As my hands are on our future, our children are our future. And I teach these children every day. I advocate for teachers in this county and throughout this state. But before I even got to this point, my mother always told me I was born with 3 strikes, and that was being a minority, being a female, and being poor. So I had to fight. I had to struggle all the way through. And in doing that, I had to not just achieve, but be an overachiever to prove that I could accomplish the things that I set out to do. So in starting with that, in my in undergrad, I had a double degree, Bachelor of Science, that was also biology, sociology, with an emphasis in criminal justice. It was because I knew that I had to overachieve to just make it out of where I was. I was in a small town and none of my family had gone to college. So I had to do something different. I had to come out. In doing that, that led me into the military, where I was able to take care of wounded veterans and their family members and practice in the healthcare field that I had dreamed of being a physician at one time. As I came out of the military, I then went on into my advocacy. I moved into advocacy at that point because I saw so many things that were wrong, so many things that were continuing to happen, and it just didn't seem like there were enough voices to help solve the situations that were there. And so I took that step forward because I have 3 sons in the midst of all of that. And having my 3 sons brought a different light, a different passion to let me know that I have to make a change to make things better for them in the future. We all have to make a change better for our youth that's coming behind us. So even though I knew that I didn't have a seat at the table and that seat wouldn't be available to me, readily available to me as a young minority female, I knew that. I stood anyway, and I didn't let that stop me. And that's what it takes to be on this path. You can't let that door that's not open or that chair that's not readily available for you at the table stop you. You have to continue to run. And with that being said, that's what made me step forward and ensure that I was able to speak on these issues that are so prevalent right now. I didn't feel that there was a better person to speak on healthcare than someone that had been in the industry, who had worked in that industry. I didn't feel that there was a better person to speak on education, being that I'm an educator. These issues that were prevalent right in our community, right in our back door, we didn't have the ability to step forward. So as we started to look forward and see other women open those doors, we didn't have to kick them in so hard. We didn't have to do that. And it made it much easier for me. So thank you, Representative Thompson, for your background, because it's your leadership that kicked the door in for young people like me that's coming behind you. So thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Tamika. Tiffany.
Well, I want to share what motivated me to serve. And I grew up in a small little neighborhood called Tangelo Park before Harris Rosen made it very popular. Okay. And I shared that part of my story because if you don't know the geographic layout of Central Florida, Tangelo Park is isolated from the rest of the African-American community. So I didn't go to Jones High School. I didn't have the tradition of the Jones. We were kind of away from other communities. And so for me, I did take advantage of having a law degree and looked around and said, you know, as Tamika said, you know, people in our community, when I think about even my own family members, don't know how to advocate for those basic issues that other communities just take for granted. You know, for example, if you live off of Popcap Island near Olympia High School, there is a certain ad valorem tax you pay that automatically makes your right-of-way look different than a Popcap Island near Pine Hills. And so communities who are not accustomed to knowing how to advocate and know how to approach their local governments to ask for appropriate funding for whether it's a speed hump or fixing a pothole or sidewalks. That's what motivated me to be that voice and use those skills that I learned by going to law school to be a voice for my community. And that is why I chose to seek public office, to have a seat at the table. And that's how I am as a clerk, actually, because even amongst my clerks as peers, I want to still have a seat at the table to make sure my voice is heard and a different perspective. I think coming from different communities, that's a different level of diversity as well. And so just that's what motivates me. And I tell people all the time, even when in the clerk world, when you talk about paying off fines and fees, people don't know how to access the court system. And so there are just so many levels to advocacy and effectively representing people, whether you're like my fellow queen, my sorority sister, Representative Thompson, whether you are advocating from a legislative perspective or me who is trying to be a voice to increase access to justice, it is making sure that people, my cousins who have to work 2-3 jobs to pay their bills, they don't have time to try to figure all this stuff out. And so they elect us to be their voice for them, to ensure they get proper customer service, to ensure that this process is as easily accessible as much as possible for them. And so that's what motivates me. I tell people all the time, it's not to make my life better, but it's to make the rest of my family who don't have the educational access that I have better. That's what motivates me. So.
Thank you, Tiffany. Our next question comes from Nicole, and it is for Representative Eskamani, and this is a good one. It's a two-part question. The first is, are you planning to run for governor? And what can someone outside of your district do to make that happen?
Unfortunately, I am out of time. I'm just kidding. Hi, everyone. It's great. It's great to be here. And thank you, Nicole, for those very, very important questions. And so I'll take the first one, running for governor. I am very, very humbled and honored by all the energy around me running for governor. I will say that we have a lot of work to do in our district and across the state of Florida. So of course, as we zoom into you from Tallahassee, our focus is very much on these next months in the legislative session. And I do hope to make a decision on that front after session is over. And I am seriously considering it because I see a vacuum of leadership statewide. And I do think we need to build a multiracial, a multi-generational, a multi-class movement to take back this state. And for the time being, I saw another question from Nicole about the Democratic Party. And no matter who's our nominee statewide, I will be working to build this party back up. Anything I can do in Central Florida alongside my colleagues. And I was really proud to support a lot of candidates across the state, work alongside groups like Ruth's List to leverage whatever resources we had to make donations, to make phone calls. And I have no doubt that under Lucy's leadership and with the work of Barbara Drabecki, we're going to be in a good place at Ruth's List to make some magic happen. And as I was listening to the testimony of my colleagues, I'm reminded of a quote that I wish I knew where it came from. But it says that we are the daughter of the witches they could not burn. and so I am just surrounded by so much inspiration and women that have carried the torch and continue to burn it bright and passing it to others. And I would be remiss if I didn't also make notice of all the mama bears who are here today, who have known me since I was a little chickie, from folks like Barbara, who was one of my first bosses at Planned Parenthood, to Deidre McNabb that invited me to a League of Women Voters event back in 2010, where I met Lori and others. And so truly feels good to be with good company, especially when we're in a place like Tallahassee, where it feels very lonely sometimes as Democrats. It's always awesome to remember that we're not alone. And actually, our new property appraiser, Rep Mercado, one of the first campaigns I volunteered on was hers in 2010. So with that said, to your second question, Nicole, about balancing our time, obviously women are incredible multitaskers. So I think there's probably a lot of great tips and tricks in the Zoom room. And if you have advice actually of how to manage time, please put it in the chat. I think that's an awesome tip that we can all benefit from. So I really do live off my calendar. That's one of my tactics, if you will. I tell my team all the time that if it's not on my calendar, like I won't be there. So the calendar is really an essential piece of my day-to-day. I also will put reminders in my calendar that are not necessarily like events or calls, but are just to-dos. And I give myself grace. Like if I can't finish something, today, for example, and it's not urgent, I will move it to tomorrow. So I really try to kind of take my life day by day with so much to do. And then honestly, there are not enough hours in the day. I am up very late. I used to be an early riser. These days I'm like a late worker, and then I drag myself out of bed in the morning, but I am hopeful to define my routine in life because I don't have a routine. And I'm sure for a lot of moms out here and grandmothers, you can relate. but I don't even have children. I think about the day I will have children, and I'm just like, oh my God, I got to get my stuff together, to be ready for that world, because I'm just glad cats are very independent, because if I had children waiting for me or a dog, I would struggle. So I'm still developing my own personal ecology, if you will, and trying to figure out, how to truly take care of the people I care about and myself alongside the district, because I will say, I spent a lot of time just on constituent services, more so than even policy making these days. And that's not, I need to find a way to, balance it all. So we're learning it every day.
Thank you. This next question is for anyone on the panel, and that is, do you think the Florida Democratic Party can make changes in South Florida to turn things around in 2022?
I'll answer that. As a native South Floridian, I should say, I was born and raised in Miami, but I grew up in Cutler Ridge, which is for South Florida now is Cutler Bay, but it will always be Cutler Ridge for me. It's possible. I think we just need to change. And I think and I will speak for Cuban American, I think amongst the Cuban Americans, they're seeing that slow transition from red to purple to blue. I know that I'm seeing it. It's the older, if you will, family members that are having a tough time in making that transition. But I feel that it is possible. I think if we start planning it in the right way and we message it in the right way to the right people, we will see that change. I feel that it will happen. And I feel a lot of Cuban American, the Latin American, Hispanic, if you will, constituents are really making that transition, especially after this last administration, and then seeing the changes now that our current administration is happening. So I'm excited to see it.
Thank you. Tamika, what would you like to add to that?
I think that the party can definitely make necessary changes, but what it's going to take is it's going to take more attention being given to our communities, the people within the communities, and what they really want. A lot of times the people that make it beyond the primary are not necessarily the people that the community actually chose, because those individuals that the community choose aren't people of wealth. They're from within the community. There are those everyday people in the community that are struggling as well. So a lot of those individuals don't have the six figures to put into a campaign account to make sure that it's in that successful light that is, the traditional look of a campaign. So what people want in the community is they want to see somebody that they know out of the leadership from within that community. It's, they have lost the trust within. It's kind of like a bad relationship. I can't remember who actually made this statement before, but it's like a bad relationship. You want to have trust in them. You want to believe that they're going to do well and they're going to make good decisions. But then when you put that trust in them, something happens and they let you down. It's kind of like that. So now, the communities, a lot of these communities have, are feeling let down. And so it's going to take candidates to restore that motivation. And the motivation is going to come from people that they know, people that they trust. And I think that if we start to push those individuals forward and give those individuals a platform, then it will change the entire look of the party. It would change the entire look, because people will actually feel that their voices are actually being heard. Right now, they don't feel that it's getting across. There's very few people out there that make them feel that their voice is actually being heard.
Thank you. Amy, Alexis wants to know, since we are experiencing a lot of divisiveness in this country, how will you all deal with our fellow sisters who are independents, Republicans, etc.?
Well, hello, ladies. And that is an amazing question, Ms. Alexis. I function more on the human factor. There is no secret I'm a progressive Democrat, but there's also a way of talking to people, and there's a way of building relationship and figuring out where the consensus portions and the consensus parts are. You don't have to agree on everything that I agree on, but we can figure out ways of working together and respecting each other. And I mean, you're asking about our sisters, but I think this is across the board, right? And at some point, one person can make a significant difference by putting a stop to a tone, a way something is said, and it may not even be directly to you, and it doesn't have to be at a level of adversarial relationships or an aggressive nature. I function with a very, very simple philosophy. You can get a heck of a lot more with honey than you can get with vinegar. There are moments that you're going to need that vinegar. There are moments that you're going to need your elbows. I am literally 5 feet tall. There are moments that I have to kick my way through if necessary, but you know what? We figure it out. You just need to understand where we're starting from, what you believe in, what your passion is, what your respect factors are, and you hold your own line. You don't want to bow down to anyone, but you also want to ensure that you are just as respectful as you expect them to be respectful of you. I have issue with, this piece of technology is a blessing and a curse all at once, because so much happens in text, so much happens via email. People pick up tones from weird moments, even through social media. You're interacting with someone and that tone comes across very different, and you don't necessarily pick that up. And so you take offense to something that there was really no offense intended. And so picking up the phone, talking to someone, being cordial takes a lot, even the people that you disagree with. I mean, I've done it with my own campaigns, with people within this community. There's some folks on even on this panel. There's ways of talking to each other to understand, I got you, I hear you, I understand you, I still disagree, but here's where we are. I don't have to burn a bridge to get to where I'm going, because that's the same bridge I got to end up crossing. That's always the case. You always have to come back and figure out how to mend what you just created. And politics, all the cliches are real. Politics makes for strange bedfellows. The people that you think hate each other today are the people that end up partnering tomorrow because there's a bigger piece to take care of. Sometimes that's for positive, sometimes that's negative. If you know who you are and you stand for your morals, your values, your pieces, people know who you are. People want to work with you. People want to engage you and figure it out. Representative Eskamani and I have different ways of doing things, and we have the same folks that talk to us and with us, and how, don't talk to me about this piece of the policy and the legislation, but how do we get you two ladies to work with us for this level of the policy? Two different angles.
Thank you, Amy. Pasha, I'm going to tweak Nicole's question just a little bit. She wants to know, do you think attitudes toward investment in communities of color, how have they changed and over the years? Has there been are people more or less open to that?
I do believe, good evening, everyone. I do believe that's the reason why we're all running, because there has been no change in communities of color. And that's the reason why a great lady whose birthday is today, Miss Angela Davis, said that Black women victories boost everyone in society. So when a Black woman wins, you boost not only white men, white women, all people of color, you boost that whole community, not just one section, because we care about more than just that community of color. We have to be it for all. And that's what you saw play and take shape in Georgia. Atlanta won an election. Mm-hmm. Atlanta got Kamala Harris to be vice president of the United States and Joe Biden to be president. They really did. And the percentage of Atlanta is how much Black. Majority of it. Majority. More than 80+% in Atlanta is Black. And that's what won the election. Those organizers that had been fighting on the ground for 15+ years were Black women. That's what shaped the narrative in this country. And now we seeing that taking shape through executive orders, through different policy changes. And that's the biggest thing that we have to realize is that when policy takes shape, it's because it's building a bridge. One of the best agitators on this phone call and one of the biggest activists who I know still has her marching boots on because she marched with my aunt last year at a Donald Trump rally is Representative Thompson and is Clerk Russell. I know them because they've been marching a long time and they still have their boots on. And one of the things that you have to do is you have to build a bridge. Activists, we need those people that are still marching and taking down things and that are still fighting for us in the streets and doing those rallies, because that brings change in the inside, whereas people like on this phone call that make those policy decisions. You need both sides of the coin. And that's how community of colors change. And that's why we are all on this call, because we haven't seen that change. We haven't seen that change in Seminole County. We haven't seen that change down in Miami. We haven't seen that change in the parts of the panhandle of the state of Florida, or for even like that, the state of Florida. You look at the cabinet now.
Thank you, Pasha. We have time for one last question, and this one is from Tracy to Representative Thompson. And she would like to know, your district was predominantly white. What was your strategy?
Well, my district is 74% white. And I used the same strategy when I ran in that district that I used when I attended the University of Miami. I enrolled at the University of Miami just after they changed their admission policy to allow for the enrollment of African Americans. So that was my first experience being in an educational environment with people outside of my own group. And I lived on campus. And so I learned some cross-cultural skills there that I still use today. And then when I left the University of Miami and came to Tallahassee, to Florida State University, many times wherever I was the only person like me. So my strategy was to go into the community where I live and have people, yes, they see my color, but they also see my competence. And I would go to city council meetings after the legislature adjourned. And I would go to Winter Garden, I would go to Windermere, I'd go to Ocoee, I'd go to Dr. Phillips, and I would report on what we had done during the legislative session. So this gives people an opportunity to see me, to understand me, and to feel comfortable that I am going to be their voice, I'm going to work for them, I'm going to speak for them. And that was very effective. It was something I did long before I decided to run for House District 44. And the district, yes, is 74% white, but in the campaign, this last campaign, I was the only candidate who was as comfortable in Paramore as I was in Windermere. I had the ability to navigate between those two worlds. And the residents of those communities, those constituents, saw that, felt comfortable, and looked beyond the color, or in addition to the color, they look for competence. And so that is how I was able to win when I ran in 2018, no one, including party leadership, thought that it could be done.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your being brave and courageous, and thank all of you so much. This is the end of our conversation tonight, but this is not the end of the conversation. We are going to keep talking about it at Ruth's List, Central Florida. We hope you will join us. We hope you will keep talking about it among your friends, your networks, your family, because our work has just begun. And so with that, Susan, I will turn it over to you for closing words, but thank you very much, everybody. Susan, you're on mute.
You're muted, Susan.
How's that?
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. I just want to say a big shout out to Danielle for her leadership in organizing this conversation. So a round of applause for Danielle. And I want to thank everyone for participating this evening. From the chat questions and comments, it's very clear to me, as I'm sure it is to you, that this is really part one of this conversation, and it's going to be continued. This is not the first one, this is the beginning. And now I would just like to close very briefly. I was reminded by Danielle, what is your call to action? My call to action to all of you this evening is very simple. It's what it is at the end of every Ruth's List event. We're a grassroots organization. We only function because of you. And we need you to help us elect our candidates like Anna and Geraldine and Amy and so many more, so that their voices are our voices at the table where decisions are made, where policy is made, where laws are made, where dollars are allocated. So the point is, we want to elect these women to office to make a better Florida for all of us, for us now, and frankly, for our grandchildren too. So first, become a member. If you're not a member, go to ruthlessflorida.org and join. Next, we need you to connect with us. So take out your phones, go to Ruthless Central Florida, like us on all our social media platforms, share our posts, invite your friends to like us. Third, mark your calendar and come to our next event, February 23rd. Jackie Brockington, who's here, wave your hand, Jackie, our board member, retired from Spectrum and former news anchor, will be leading a discussion on how to refresh your Zoom appearance for 2021. And last but not least, join us on March 2nd for a You Should Run workshop. Maybe you're thinking of running, maybe you know someone who is, it's something that's been on your mind. Come to the workshop, listen to the message, and participate. It's March 2nd, it'll be virtual, and we'd love for you to be there. So with that, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to our amazing panelists. So many insights this evening. Thank you, Danielle, and thank you all of you. Happy and healthy 2021. See you February 23rd. Love you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.